This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Welcome into the Triple Option. Timmy Tuesday with us here.
Timmy!
Roy Ogletree.
Timmy!
So, the Timmy Tuesday's not going to
No, I don't think. I also don't know if that impression from South Park is kosher
going to land
anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's for them.
Yeah,
they're kind of.
I don't have the cachet.
Here's what's interesting about them. They don't care, so it made them kind of bulletproof.
Right.
And if you want to call them out on something, they're just going to make an episode about it.
Right.
And then you're going to be like kind of caught in the void. So you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. So just don't mess with them. But there's a lot to get to. We've got big games this week, which we'll talk about in the later segments of the show. But one of the big stories in college football is the reaction to Dan Lanning, which has kind of gotten out of control.
The reaction to Dan Lanning.
The reaction. And Dan Lanning was as absolutely cool as a cucumber yesterday when they asked him about, particularly a guy who I don't like to talk about, Skip Bayless's. It's like, look, he loves what Deion's doing for college football. I think what people may not realize is post-game speeches are improv. They're like a performance art thing.
Yeah.
They're like
acting exercise.
Honestly, like as an improver myself, some of them sound like, okay, give me 3 things I need to say and a location where 2 people would be stuck on a boat. You know, like, and then you just go.
Who is the person that slided me? Your dad? All right.
Yeah. That's how it goes. Like, all right, let's go. And then you just go.
Yeah.
And the dumb things that, and I love telling the story because it's very funny to me, but the dumb things that happen to get teams motivated. One time, Baylor had a team that was pretty confident they could finally go break their losing streak in Lawrence against Kansas and Bill Self. And so
Basketball.
So during that game, they were celebrating they do this in Lawrence because they literally invented basketball there. They were doing the, 100 and how many years of us inventing basketball video with all the hype video and stuff like that. And it was so loud that Scott Drew couldn't do his little right before the game, like, hey,
rah-rah.
Remember, we're going to do this. Here's our keys to, do this. So he took them off the floor real quick and did it in the hallway where you could hear yourself think. Well, Bill Self sees this and walks over to Devontae Graham and says, hey, they're disrespecting you by not watching this video. Now look, one, Baylor's not beholden to watch a video. It wasn't the national anthem. It wasn't any of that stuff. They just went off the floor during this video. But Devontae Graham, being the super stud player that he was,
right,
and needing maybe a little bit of motivation and knowing that this is a good Baylor team he's about to play, gets his team just geeked up. And all Bill Self said to him was, I didn't watch this tape. That's all he said. But they're not there. They're disrespecting you. And after the game, when asked about it, Bill Self was like, yeah, I did say that.
Funny how that works.
It worked. And so then you have to ask him, did you really think that? And he's like, no. Yeah. He's like, it's fine. He's like, you use whatever you can in the moment. It is exactly what Deion Sanders does because a lot of it is manufactured. And not only that, and I'm sure Deion is going over with his team this week, is you cannot create and manufacture things and then go do those things and not expect it to be turned back around on you by someone who is also good at this, which Dan Lanning clearly is.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's Deion level good at it, but Deion spent years and years and years in the public eye crafting this.
Yeah.
But, when he's given the pregame speech and you see the guys out there jumping on the O, and they had said that they didn't like when people were just preying on the Buffalo.
And Oregon put out, the sizzle reel of it today.
Yeah, the sizzle reel, yeah.
4K or whatever. Conveniently, the only ones in that video talking mess were,
Yes.
Colorado players, but that's how it works.
But that's what he used. That just explains. That's what he used. Deion probably had a similar thing that he used, and that's how they go. That's how it works. But I don't think you should be beholden to anything you said in a pregame speech almost like anything you say when you're drunk. Like,
No, I just blacked out there for a minute. I don't know
yeah,
what
exactly.
happened.
Like it's one of those things where you are trying to motivate however you can. You've got that last couple of minutes before everybody goes charging out on the field, and you need to say that thing. It's kind of like that scene in Walk the Line where, you know what I'm talking about, where he's in
the water.
Well, no, he's in the he's in the studio, and the guy's like, that one song.
Yeah.
You know, like
You have that one song on your deathbed.
yeah,
Just
that's how coaches think of the pregame speech every week.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one chance I've got to do this.
Yeah, I texted you last night and I said, you were like, what we don't have segments right now. And I was like, how about just title this, Why Not to Take Anything Any Coach Ever Says Seriously and Other Life Lessons?
Yeah.
From the triple option. Dan Lanning, look, he was right when in his follow-up press conference, the Monday morning press conference that all these coaches do, or Tuesday, today's Tuesday,
yeah.
with the Monday morning thing that all the coaches do. He was right in saying, is like, look, you saw like 15 seconds on ESPN. Now there's a couple of things there. Is like, we're fighting for clicks. Everybody took that and was like very casual of Oregon to say that, that they're fighting for clicks when we have like sneakers that change colors. Like,
Yeah.
the whole bit is ridiculous. And that's why I said, don't take anything that these guys say in the heat of the moment that seriously. And especially after we came off of a segment where Lane Kiffin, now having to eat the trash, was like, yeah, they're just not calling, the defensive coordinator isn't calling the plays anymore. And they're just saying nonsense. It is whatever statistical, they have found whatever advantage to get these, to motivate these 18 to 20-year-old athletes. And look, it's a heck of a line. They're fighting for clicks.
Yeah.
We're fighting to win football
For
games.
wins, yeah.
And it's it's kind of a different mindset than what you have seen publicly from the Oregon teams, and that transition that they want to be the Alabama of the West. And I think Dan Lanning going there is like a really step in that direction. But, I wanted to talk about is the reaction to the reaction, the Twitter stuff, and it feeds the machine. Deion knows it feeds the machine. Lanning knows it feeds the machine. You have to buy into it to get these players to come here. You have to buy into the hype. The dog whistles that are going off on Twitter right now are ridiculous.
Yeah. No, look.
Let's be real here. Like, it's not that deep. It really is not that deep.
No.
But people, and look, it's Twitter, so everything is hyperbole. But like, people took it way too far.
Yeah. I said, this is a great little bit. Like, I can't wait to hear how Deion, spins this in his own way. Mm-hmm. But I only want the entertainment of the tete-a-tete between those two. Anything outside of that doesn't matter to me. It's just about that. Look, I'm old enough to remember that, Jim Donnan and Phil Fulmer got in an actual fight after a game one time. Wow. So I enjoy spiciness between coaches, especially when look, how many times, it's like a boxing match, right?
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't really enjoy or get excited for kind of some random boxing matches where guys are literally beating each other up in a fight, a fist fight. If they're like, man, I
respect that guy.
I just really respect Dennis. He's a great guy. I'm going to hate punching him. Yeah. I tell you, I wish we weren't doing this. I have so much. Could we just hug? What if instead of a boxing match, you guys paid for pay-per-view see if we could set the world record for the longest hug? Because I just love this guy so much. No, you want to see that.
And hopscotch. What do we do that, guys?
Yeah, where's what if
really respect his family?
What if this was just a baking show? What if we just did that? That's not what you want. So yeah, people took it really seriously, and I do think that Deion has a great many detractors who are detractors for reasons outside of his actual ability. That is very true.
Yep.
But he also has, he has people that are speaking up to protect him or speaking up in defense of those very small number of people. But this doesn't fall into that category at all. Mm-hmm. But sometimes people try to pull it into that. And it's not. This is pregame speech. look, most of the stuff that Deion has motivated his team with is total malarkey.
Right.
Do you know who knows it's total malarkey? Deion does. He knows it. He knows it. And if you think that jumping on Dan Lanning knows. If you think that them jumping on the O is the thing that's going to get you over the hump to where I need you to be, I won't tell you until later that it wasn't.
By the way, the dumbest tradition that people get mad about in sports. They stepped on our logo.
They're going to step on it a lot. You're going to play on it.
Run over it, in fact, actually. Many times, hopefully. I mean, I don't know how many times Colorado crossed the 50, but, like, it just, like, it is that whole thing, that whole shtick is very funny. I don't know. Taking things out of context from a 15-second clip while it was viral and did go great, and then people taking that and running with that into completely separate phases of where it didn't need to be is, I guess, concerning. I mean, I guess it drives the numbers. I don't know where I am with it. I just know that, like, these coaches are selling their thing.
Yeah.
Coaches, when they're not coaching, should, always be closing.
Yeah. And look, nobody's going to be able to do, like Dan Lanning was doing Dan Lanning's thing. Deion's doing Deion's thing. Now, I think Dan Lanning and a lot of coaches are smart enough to know that I might have to do this a little bigger than I was because, especially if I'm going to try, like Dan Lanning is, they're swimming in the same waters for players. Mm-hmm. They're going to go. Oregon and Colorado are going to go and try to get big 5-star players all the time. So you probably have to turn your volume up a little bit more than you might have initially intended because of who you are competing with.
The moment it's going to be the most watched game of the day.
Yeah. So I'm going to turn the volume up because I need to in this moment. But, when I'm playing another coach that's not Deion Sanders, I may not need to do this.
Yeah. We'll see if he lets the cameras into the locker room after that even anymore. I'm sure why not? But
why not?
I do like kind of what Lanning is doing out there, and they were both. What's funny is that the way that people took this, they're both like really complimentary of each other after the fact too. He was like, "What Deion's doing is great for football," and Deion Sanders, if I remember correctly, was like, "Yeah, they beat the hell out of it." Like,
and he said, "Look, I told him you better get me this year."
Yeah,
good. The thing is, they'll probably never play again unless it's a postseason game. They're not in the same conference anymore. I mean, once the season's over in January, they're not in the same conference.
And look, I think a little bit of this, I mean, so much of the time we are so used to, like, because the NFL is the most popular thing, we're so used to the coach speak that goes along with the Belichickian sort of coach speak, and that's become sort of popular, is never give too much away.
Yeah.
College is kind of, I love when college does this, where there's such a wide variety of coaches and so many coaches that, like, you're bound to get somebody that goes off the handle a little bit. Yeah. I think people that haven't been watching college football that are now watching college football are like, well, they're really like going after each other.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily okay. I really think it just comes down to, and we're going in circles, but I really think it just comes down to trying to motivate 19 to 22-year-old or 18 to 22-year-olds. Whereas in, like, something like, if people are used to watching the NFL, they don't have to do that, really. You got some coaches, Mike Vrabel or whatever, that are going to go nuts. But, like, most of the time, we're so used to we came out there, played really good football, and we executed and did the thing. And I was, the players are really motivated to play. I'm glad they showed up.
Like, you know who the best, like, basic locker room quote is that, like, makes it sound really good, but he's just giving you cliches, is Dak Prescott. Listen to Dak Prescott after a win, and he's hitting all the, like, we're just playing this brand of ball that we want to. Yeah. But he knows how to, like, throw a couple of other things in there where you're like, oh, okay, well,
that'll make a headline.
That extra sentence really made this not boring. Right. But that's how it is. But in college, I think that's what makes it a little different. There is a little bit more of us versus you, because again, every team that lost in the NFL this last week, it doesn't really matter. Like, no. It won't, like, ultimately, like
fighting for a playoff spot. This is like life or death. It feels like every single week, and I don't know if people are used to the magnitude, I think, of every single game.
Yeah, and especially like people who might be NFL fans that don't watch as much college that tuned in specifically for the Dion game.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we don't see this all the time. Well, yeah, you kind of do. Like, it's elevated. And look, nobody's immune to it. Dan Lanning's already stuck his foot in his mouth this offseason about Colorado when they asked him, how do you feel about Colorado leaving? And he said at the time, like in the moment, it made sense, but very rightfully so, that like Colorado's not done anything for the Pac-12, so why are they worried about them leaving? Because they hadn't, since they'd gone over there, except for the fact that, your team left less than 2 weeks later.
Also, I do want to ask, because I posed the question is like, why not don't take anything these coaches say seriously? When do you have to take what they're saying? Like when they're losing, I think is probably when.
I don't know. Like I wouldn't take anything like you hear them say to the team is a different thing than what you hear them say to the public.
Right.
So everything is in the gray area of in between, right? Mm-hmm. So something's in between all of it, and
granted, if a coach gets caught on a mic saying something heinous, maybe we take
exactly.
that. But no, I just think that
if you say something heinous, then you're comfortable enough to where you're saying it too much.
Yeah.
So
maybe that needs to change. But I think it is an interesting line of like, okay, now I'm going to come into this formal press conference. This is where you need to take me seriously, probably.
Yeah.
We just have more access now than I think we've ever had. And, they've always done the pregame pump-up locker room stuff, and that has been filmed by ESPN for decades now. But, I think we have more access and more access to react quicker now to it than
oh, my gosh, later. I couldn't believe it. It was a great line. It was a great line. That's all people should have said. It's a great line.
We're fighting for clicks. He got clicks.
Yeah, there you go. Yes. Yeah, to just say the thing that you're not fighting for, even though you are, and then people will.
Meanwhile, what do you think about, because we talked about Lane Kiffin last week doing the same thing, basically.
Look, whatever.
Does he has to even backtrack any of that?
No, he doesn't have to backtrack. He's just saying, well, that's what I thought when I watched that part of the game. I mean, that's all he has to say. Oh, so okay.
That's what I thought.
Whatever. That's just what I thought, So
it's a great way to live, honestly.
I mean, whatever. So that was just, and look, he's trying everything he can do to throw some spice and maybe get, people questioning and not. See, the thing is, if he throws that out there, then maybe they forget to ask him about, hey, is Quinshon Judkins totally healthy? Is that you can throw that out there and people are like, oh, he said that they're not doing that. Well, now you're only thinking about that.
Yeah.
It's like me telling you don't think about a purple zebra. Well,
I'm thinking about a purple zebra.
You're thinking about a purple zebra. So
no.
He's and now you maybe forgot what you were gonna ask me about before. So I think that was more calculated in let's ask less questions about Ole Miss right now and put the focus on Alabama.
Right.
Than anything he actually believed.
Well, and then the antithesis of all the Dan Lanning stuff, which just it felt way more manufactured than even Dan Lanning in the moment. I feel like he believed what he said. I don't believe Ryan Day at all. Did you see the post game thing?
That Lou Holtz bothered him.
He was watching clips earlier in the day. He did. He was online like the rest of us, and then he was I got to come out here and give a rah rah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think but Ryan Day probably used that for the team. Look at this old.
Do they care what an octogenarian says?
Doesn't matter. They're in Lou Holtz. This is a guy who's in Lou Holtz. You're in Lou Holtz country. Lou Holtz is disrespecting you. Let's make Lou Holtz sad on the day that they honor Lou Holtz. That's how I look at it. Hey, he didn't think you can win this game.
Oh, darn.
Yeah. This is a legend of this game. He coached and won a national championship at this university too. And he somehow thinks that you guys are weak. You're weak. This old man thinks you're weak. And, whatever works. Again,
I felt like that was more manufactured than anything that we saw from Dion and Lanning.
Here's the thing that now that you're past this age, I can tell you. And you'll understand. Because I was the same way. Even the smartest 21-year-old kid is still an idiot.
You know how often I think of that? Even my sister's still in college, and I'm not not putting her down or anything, but sometimes like I'll see her friends or her and I'm just like, yeah, I was that dumb, wasn't I?
Yeah. Yeah. And then like, that's the thing that hurts. You'll be like, oh, these kids today are stupid. And you're like,
no, they're just as stupid as they've always been.
I was stupid too. It was just, I looked a different kind of stupid.
Yeah.
You know,
stupid.
We were really into baggy jeans. You guys are really into tight ones. That's the only difference.
It's coming back around, man. Jinkos are coming back around. Yeah. No, just more stupid in public, I think, too.
Yeah.
Just in front of a camera.
But that's it. So whatever works, again, for even because in the moment, especially emotionally in a locker room, you get all fired up and you get that rah-rah speech. Like, oh, look, as an adult, I've been to see like motivational speakers and I've like walked out and been like, man, you know what? I'm really going to apply that to my life. Have I? No. Okay. But in the moment, I bought the rhetoric because of how it was delivered to me.
Sell me this pen.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Sell me this pen. When we come back, we'll talk about the big games this week. And then later in the show, we're going to play Paul and Royden Try to Fix a Program.
Which one?
We're going to do Michigan State today.
Oh, no.
We're going to do Michigan State.
Okay.
We're going to start difficult.
Okay.
And then maybe get easier. But Paul and Royden Fix a Program. Michigan State.
All right.
From the top down, we're going soup to nuts.
Let's start somewhere like Clemson.
Clemson is easy. Spend the money that we all know you have.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's all you got to do. When we come back, we'll look at some of the bigger games this week. I want Royden's thoughts on Notre Dame and Duke, which there is a time throughout all of human recorded history where we would not have talked about this game at all. Mm-hmm. But now it's important, and I don't understand what the world is. This is the Triple Option on 365 Sports.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Welcome back to the Triple Option. Paul Catalina, Royden Ogletree. Royden, Jack, and I will all be in Orlando this week.
Look at that.
Yes, and I'm going to put you on the spot. Royden, you're going to come down, Bounce House Social in Orlando, Friday, 4 to 7. We're going to be there.
Are you buying?
Somebody is.
Oh, okay.
Sure, but come on down. Hang out with us.
I'll be there.
Bring Darby. Don't just leave her behind alone in Orlando.
This is just for the boys, dude.
No, but we're having a big event there.
Darby will do just fine on her own.
Yeah.
Should be all right.
Yeah, I know. But, yeah, so we'll be there. KWTX will be there. We'll be doing pregame stuff there as well on Saturday. So should be a good time. So on Thursday, Jack and I will be at Burger U. And then on Friday, Jack and I will be at Bounce House Social.
Is there actual bounce houses?
I hope so.
That's the only reason I will come.
I mean, that's what they call the stadium there. So I'm sure they have bounce houses.
I was promised bouncy houses.
That's why it's so hard to win there, because instead of grass, it's just bounce.
Inflatable. Everybody's tearing their ACLs all over the place.
You have to get used to it.
Right.
So,
That'd be so stupid. People are just, hey, remember how bad the turf was at NRG Stadium?
Yeah.
Just double that.
Speaking of that, I'm just as a warning, Garrett might have experienced this because he has children. But do you know how many adults I know that have hurt themselves at children's birthday parties jumping in the bounce house?
A lot.
A lot. Like, there's a lot to varying levels of severity, but like you'll see them again like a week later and you're like, hey, what's going on with your shoulder there? You're kind of holding it like, after the party, we thought we'd go jump in the bounce house and I can't do that anymore.
Things don't move the way they used to. You ever seen somebody like there's a video that'll go viral every single year of somebody sprinting like that is well past the age of sprinting.
Yeah.
Every single time that they tear their hamstring. I kind of thought about it. I was sitting there and
I'm glad when I tore both of mine, it wasn't on video.
Yeah, I'm like,
I was playing softball.
I don't know when the last time I sprinted was. Like, what do I have to sprint? If I'm sprinting, something's on fire.
Royden, I tore both my hamstrings in a friendly game of softball.
Oh no!
In a game that my team was up 22-5.
Oh brother,
that's how my competitive juices got going. Because
this double is going to be the one.
Well, Q, your boy Q, he's on Las Vegas radio now. Your boy Q was the left fielder for the other team, and I wanted to kind of stick it to him. But,
both of them.
Pop. Embarrassing. And guess what? Q came in from left field and tagged me out as I was laying on the ground. That's how competitive he was. So, again, here's the thing for people over 35. It's the rule of 80%. If everybody goes 80%, you're all still hustling, and you're still going to have fun, but you're probably not going to hurt yourself.
Right.
It's the minute where you feel like you've got to give it your all.
That's going to go wrong.
That's going to go wrong. Because here's the deal. Physical acts right now, unless you're in a real competition for real stakes, when you're older, you're not Tom Brady. You're just in your, like...
You are eating nightshades still.
Yeah. Nobody is going to come to you and be like, if it would have been for you, we'd have won that pickleball tournament, you punk. You coward.
Oh, look. Hold on there. No, just before we go into this, I don't know how young your audience is. If you're younger than me, start stretching now.
Yeah, exactly.
Just get out of bed,
Just
start
do
stretching.
That. All right. So this week, in some interesting games, I think the one that doesn't necessarily pique my interest the most, but in the football and sports are weird, is Notre Dame and Duke. In that Notre Dame, my opinion about them after Ohio State hasn't changed at all. They're still the same team I thought they were going to be.
Right.
Especially when they put all 11 guys on the field, they're really salty.
It goes a long way when you have all the people that you're supposed to have.
Especially when they do it 2 plays in a row.
Was it 2 plays in a row?
2 plays in a row.
I just saw the last play because that was what everybody was highlighting.
The second to last play where they completed the pass, they only had 10 on the field.
Oh, that not good?
Yeah.
That's not good.
So, yeah. But Notre Dame and Duke play, and Duke, Notre Dame just came off a really physical game against Ohio State, we just talked about, and Duke plays very physical. Mm-hmm. So I kind of get the feeling we're going to see a similar game with Notre Dame and Duke. Just absolute Sam Hartman and Riley Leonard kind of going at each other. And, we'll see. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this one breaks down, because I think the style of football that Marcus Freeman wants to play and the style that Mike Elko want to play are pretty similar.
Well, look, I think Ohio State, granted, you take this with a grain of salt because they lost Marvin Harrison Jr., who is like the ultimate game changer. They couldn't really throw the ball against Notre Dame. Leonard only has 2 touchdown passes.
He came back in the game, so.
Yeah, Leonard only has 2 touchdown passes. That's not their strong suit. I mean, obviously, like Waters has 7 touchdowns on the ground. That's where they're doing most of their work. But like the game that I've watched with Duke, of course, was the early Clemson game, and since and a few others. But they're just like, they're nasty, man. Like their linebackers are flying all over the place, hitting each other. And I think it's the same for Notre Dame. I trust Notre Dame's offense to kind of bounce back a little bit more, just because, like we said last week, they are relying on like freshmen and stuff to make a lot of plays. But I think Hartman has to have a bounce back game. Yeah. I mean, he's just been too good this year. Now,
and
granted,
he was okay the other night. I mean, they were just that was the kind of game it was going. Like both of the guys were like, everybody on offense for both teams was okay.
Right.
Like it was a defensive game. I didn't think anybody played terrible. It's just both those defenses were controlling that game.
But it is interesting to see where that coach has Duke all of a sudden. Like, I mean, they just believe in themselves. Yeah. It goes a long way to revitalizing program. Or Duke's never been vital in the first place. So, I just like making them into something that they've never been before.
Yeah.
And look, they spend all the money in the world on basketball and making that program what it's been. I don't see why Duke can't be a premier football, like especially in the Carolinas.
I think
why can the Tar Heels? I mean, obviously it goes a long way when you have the coach that the Tar Heels do, but like, why can't Duke be there, right? With like where NC State has at least been, or
I think part of the thing is that if you've ever been a good coach at Duke, somebody comes to get you. Like
that's fair.
Steve Spurrier was a really good coach at Duke, and guess what happened? His alma mater came and said, "Please come and fix us," and he did. David Cutcliffe was kind of the perfect guy for them, where they were going to be good sometimes, they were going to be Duke sometimes, and ride the wave. But eventually, his time came and went. So, what's probably going to happen with Mike Elko here? Mm-hmm. Like, is Mike Elko going to stay at Duke, or is someone going to hire Mike Elko?
Yeah, he's a little bit older, so maybe like he decides to stick around for a little bit. But I'm saying they have the facilities, they have the money to, or maybe they don't. I'm not sure about the football facilities, but they have like the infrastructure in place to compete. So I'm glad to see that they're in the mix. And it just makes an already entertaining ACC that much more entertaining when you have that much more depth.
Yeah, so. Look, and I mean, speaking from a totally unbiased perspective here, Clemson being down a little bit is good if other teams are good as well. So it's not good if Clemson is down and so they're like you just have a bad league.
Right.
So if North Carolina continue to be good, if Florida State's really back, if all those things are true, then that's fine. Like Clemson being down is not bad for the ACC. It's probably, at least in the short term, good thing for them.
Well, I mean, people wanted to make this argument with the Big 12 when Texas wasn't quote unquote their best. So I just think that does a rising tide lift all boats in this situation? Like probably. I just think that the ACC wants Clemson to be good. Don't get me wrong, but I do think that having those programs come up to meet them is the best option.
The Big 12's only become more interesting in the interim that Oklahoma is not guaranteed to play in the title game every year, right?
Right.
So like those two things are pretty interesting that the last couple of years where they haven't. Mm-hmm. So Oklahoma's not been in the title game. Okay, great. They're not going to be one of the teams that you just go to default win it. And the reason the SEC grew as much as it did was they could point to a bunch of different teams that were winning it all the time, and it wasn't the same until Alabama took that away from them. But they still tried to pretend like
it was the whole thing.
It's the whole thing. Well,
Vanderbilt's in there, baby.
Yeah, the whole thing is good. Well, no, Alabama's doing something that nobody else is doing.
Right.
So Alabama started to kind of Oklahoma the SEC a little bit, but nobody noticed because there was enough diversity in there where you're like, well, okay.
Eventually LSU will win one.
LSU's going to win one. Georgia's now popped up and win one, but, Tennessee in 1998 doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
The two Urban Meyer titles were a long time ago, long enough now that they've made a documentary about it. Like, you can't just say
a thing that you loved, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I talked about it at length on this show. I don't know if you were here that day, but I was hot about it.
Untold, except for all the stuff that you already know.
Yeah, untold. No, it stayed to be untold. We're untold, and we're not going to tell it. Not from our perspective.
They really need to change the name of that documentary series.
Well, if you're not going to tell anything, then yes.
Yeah.
So there are like those conferences. Look, the ACC is the same as the Big 12 was. Like, look, of the last 30 some odd titles, like Florida State and Clemson have won 29 of them.
Yeah.
There's like 4 other teams that have like snuck up and got them. Mm-hmm. So there's not a lot of diversity in the wins there when it comes down to it. So when someone who's had such a chokehold on it loses a grip on a conference, and look, Duke, Miami, like all these teams could very well come up and win it. Like there's no guarantees right now. Like Florida State looks really good, but they're 4 games into this thing.
I mean, and not for nothing, the past 2 games they've looked. Granted, Clemson is still talented regardless of where they are, but like they've looked beatable too.
Yeah. Again, there's not a team in the country except for Michigan and Georgia who haven't been challenged yet that to me hasn't looked beatable. Texas has looked beatable. I mean, they look less and less beatable by the second, but they've looked beatable.
Right.
Ohio State's looked beatable, right? Probably should have been beaten last week. Like everybody else has looked
Ryan
beatable.
Day will come after you, man.
Washington hasn't looked beatable yet.
They may be the one where I'm like, they look Now, I'm not sure how much of a challenge they'll have coming up against Arizona, who is, they're 3-1, and I think faring a little bit better than Arizona State, who threw the book at USC this last time. But Washington from start to finish is just murdering people.
Oh yeah, look,
With
their
with
test,
the most efficient offense maybe ever.
yeah, they're probably going to be 5-0 after this week, unless this is some sort of trap game. But then they have Oregon.
I mean, 9 p.m. in Arizona.
Then
they
have Oregon in 2 weeks on the 14th. So they have a bye week to get ready for Oregon. Their schedule on the way out is as difficult as anybody's in the country, and that's because the Pac-12 is difficult. At USC, home for Utah, at Oregon State, and home for the Apple Cup, which might be the last Apple Cup for the foreseeable future.
That'll be such a fun game. There may be 1,000 points scored in that game.
I mean, so that's their last 4. But if they continue to play like this, then those last 4 even going to be that problem. But yeah, they are.
Well, yeah, Michael Penix looks like the best quarterback in the country, not named Caleb Williams, but I think they roll over probably Arizona State or Arizona rather.
Yeah, Arizona.
And it's an 18-point. They're an 18-point favorite, so
yeah.
I don't know. It gets a little wonky when the day starts winding down and those night games are going on out in the desert. But I think it'll be fine this year. I wanted to mention to you, and I know that of course people are going to want to talk about Texas and Kansas and LSU and Ole Miss, but Florida Kentucky to me is sneaky, maybe the best game of the weekend.
Well, I think we'll see who they both are.
Yeah,
a little bit. Florida, I kind of think I know who they are. They might be a little bit better than I thought, but look, I'm going to bet on Devin Leary, who I think is a lot better than Graham Mertz. And as a matter of fact, I think that Devin Leary not going to Alabama was my big shocker of the offseason.
Yeah.
I thought that that's what he was going to do because he's very much a kind of a Saban-style quarterback. But I think Kentucky will show. Like Mark Stoops, one of the better coaches in the SEC that people forget about because Kentucky went from being a basketball-only school to being like, oh, they're a solid 7-5 to 8-4, 9-3 team in a good year. Well, he's a really good coach that he's doing that at a school that cares, had cared so little about football that he was able to
it's the Duke effect.
Call it out. Yeah. Well, look, he and John Calipari, got into a little bit of a spat last year because John Calipari very publicly was like, well, this is a basketball school and people care about basketball in the middle of one of their better football seasons they were having. He's like, hey,
can we not?
Can we why don't you wait till we're over? I get it. Nobody knows more than I do that we're a basketball school. My brother is Bob Stoops, and at his school they gave him whatever he wanted. I know
that Devin Leary has 5 interceptions already on the year, but over 1,000 yards passing. But does he? Granted, look, they've played Eastern Kentucky and Akron and Vanderbilt, but does he make that team go a little bit more than what we saw Will Levis do last year?
I don't know. I think it's
Will
about
Levis is awesome.
I think it's about the same. I think that's why and he wanted to play for Liam Cohen again. So yeah, he wanted to play for Liam Cohen, and so that's why he went there. So I don't know. Look, Kentucky's next 4 are against Florida, which they have at home, and they actually just slayed that dragon winning in Gainesville recently, which they hadn't done in forever. Then they got to go to Georgia. So sorry about your luck. And then Mizzou and Tennessee, who I don't think we really know that much about either of those 2 programs either. Tennessee's had their moment of bad. They haven't really had their moment of good yet. Mizzou's had their moment of good. We'll see if, who they are down the line. But
I just want to know if Florida can score points.
Look, they only scored 22 against Charlotte.
That's why I'm thinking it's going to be a nasty game that I'm really interested in watching.
Defensively, they're probably better than I think a lot of people gave them credit for after the Utah game because they looked like they were standing in mud there. But Utah just doesn't need to score points to win games, right now. And the scary thing about Utah is eventually they're going to get Cam Rising back, and they're going to score more points.
Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's how it's going to go. But another one this week, okay, we're going to close with Texas and Kansas in this segment. But Ole Miss and LSU. To me, Ole Miss coming off a very disappointing loss. LSU, I was sitting here watching that game with Garrett. He's still, look at his face. He's still stressed out about it. You can't see him because we don't have a camera pointed that way. But honestly, he's still stressed out about it, and it's been over for 4 days. It was not LSU's best moment, but they gutted it out. Ole Miss, in the second half of that game, let Jaden Milroe find his confidence, which is not good for the rest of the SEC in that you had a team that was playing not confident for the first time in a long time.
Alabama wanted to spit the bit so bad in that game, and Ole Miss never took it.
Yeah. So
never capitalized.
It's going to take, and the SEC West is like got the potential to like eat its own tail this year, like the snake. Like that's because who's of the teams in the SEC West right now, who's great? Who do you like? Who would you worry about playing in any circumstance? Not even Bama right now.
No, and that performance was so bad. I mean, obviously, like, it goes against a Hall of Fame coach who then found out what was ever wrong with his defense and all of a sudden their secondary could cover. Yeah. But, that performance from Ole Miss was just so disappointing considering what we know, like a Lane Kiffin offense to be, that I don't know. Like, do you have a
no? Like, I think LSU's catching them at the right moment because Ole Miss had a chance. They had a chance to slay the dragon, and then they'd been rolling in on Saturday evening at home. For some reason, a 5:00 start.
That was a random time,
but yeah. But they're rolling in. 5:00, welcoming LSU. They can be like, hey, we just beat Alabama, gave them 2 home losses in a row. We slayed the dragon, so now we're the kingmakers of the SEC West. And then LSU, who had to, white knuckle through a performance, can be like, oh, God, here we go again. But now I think LSU's coming off a big win. They're coming off a really disappointing loss. And I think LSU's in a good position here to especially if they can be consistent on offense. They have these flashes of holy cow, these guys can do some things, but they don't seem, the play calling seems choppy. If they can find themselves, I think this would be a good week to do it against Lane Kiffin, who really needs to bounce back after what happened in that second half. Man. Yeah, really laying an egg.
They're only going to go as far as Daniels takes them. Now he's been pretty dynamic most of the season.
Yeah.
Can he protect himself from getting body slammed through the surface of the earth? But
he doesn't see, like, I know he's a tall guy, but he's not like a big guy.
Yeah.
But I think he feels like he's a lot bigger.
He's all arms and legs, but I'm just like, every time that I see a highlight of Daniels,
he has a lot of torso.
He is like getting smashed through the surface of the earth, through the earth's crust, and everybody's just like, oh, well, that happens.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that doesn't need to happen to your starting quarterback who's been really good.
Yeah. Okay, we saw Texas here last week look as good as a team can possibly look.
Oh, my God.
That muffed 2 punts.
Yeah.
And but that was the only bad things that seemingly happened to them. They are building something there, for sure. But Kansas has been a nightmare for them, not only in games that they've lost, but in some of the games that they've beaten. Kansas has had to go down to, Sam Ellinger had to take Kansas to an overtime.
Home, yeah,
in overtime. They lost at home a couple years ago, very, very famously in Sark's first year. The kid got an Applebee's NIL deal out of it.
It's the best thing I've ever seen. It's the most Kansas thing I've ever seen. It's like, come on down to Applebee's.
Yeah. Where are you going to go after the game? Well, I got to go to Applebee's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is bottomless, boneless wings. What are you talking about? Like, how
$7.99 lunch. Get on it.
Yeah. So, I do think though, as good as this Kansas team has started to get, right, I think it's going to be a little bit different for them rolling in now. Where I don't know if they're going to be. They're not going to sneak up on Texas for one, and two, they're going to see a Texas crowd that is like engaged to a level that they weren't the last time they were there.
You're not going to come in and beat us. Not this isn't the same old Texas team. That's so funny that we have to talk about it like that. But it is true.
But if you looked at the crowd that night they were playing Kansas, they sold out the game, but
they weren't there.
They weren't there.
Yeah.
They weren't there. There wasn't all these things going on where now Texas has decided, like, finally, maybe let's make this thing an event. you know, again. And
well, last year it was disappointing because they went into it and like Jalen Daniels was rolling and was like odds-on Heisman favorite for a minute for Kansas, and then got hurt. Maybe not going into that Texas game, but
he got hurt and missed considerable amount of time.
Texas game, and so it was like that was disappointing. And I just don't, even though their backup, I forget, is been there forever.
Jason
Bean.
Jason
Bean, like, is serviceable. We didn't get what we were promised last year, like a good Kansas team going up against a Texas team instead of like these plucky underdogs.
Yeah.
But yeah, now they're no longer, they are underdogs, but they are not like you said, they're not going to sneak up on you. Texas, watching them play Baylor, they are the biggest and fastest that I've ever seen them.
Yeah.
And that's saying something. I mean, not going back to discounting maybe the 2005, 2010 or 9 teams, but even those teams, those dudes up front were bigger. The defensive linemen were bigger than Baylor's offensive linemen.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably going to kind of play into the Kansas game. Is I don't know. Will they be able to scheme up some stuff? Will Leipold be able to throw the book at them and like I was saying that Arizona State was doing to USC where they're doing like halfback passes and whatever?
Yeah.
I think you kind of have to do that because they're just too big and too fast. It was truly shocking to see how fast they got off the ball and how big they were. They can be beaten downfield a little bit, Texas can, if you can get off the ball.
Yeah.
Will Daniel's running threat come into it maybe more so than what we saw against Baylor?
This is interesting because they've got Oklahoma right after.
Yeah.
Right. So but again, this would be a trap game for Texas at home if this had never happened before.
Right.
But now, like, there's
Now
guys.
everybody's like, whoa.
Look, the last time Kansas was there, they lost this game, right?
Yeah.
And so they've had all these games against Kansas that's been a problem, and a lot of these guys on this team have lived through that.
And it's a meme. The players know it's a meme.
So they know it now. So I think that it's going to be a little bit different. All right, we'll take a break right here. We come back really quickly. We're going to fix Michigan State.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, we're going to hire a coach and all that stuff. This is the Triple Option, 365 Sports.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Welcome back.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. Second day in a row I've done that. You have no idea how disappointed in myself I am.
How long have you been doing radio?
It's not even that. I'd have a show with another guy who does it every day, has done it every day, in spite of the fact that the open's the same every day.
And who makes all of these opens?
I do. I do. So it's a little bit worse. I was hoping that you wouldn't throw that in there, Jack, but thanks. So
you're fired.
Royden has no authority here. He's just a guest in the studio. Royden, okay, let's fix Michigan State. Let's fix that.
Okay.
That's the first coaching job that's open. So let's fix it.
I'm lost. Did they officially fire him?
Well, they've told him he's going to be fired.
Okay.
And now he's responded, and so, look, he's not coming back. The job's open.
Yeah. We litigated this.
Yes.
2 shows ago.
When you sexually harass the person you invite to teach people against sexual harassment and sexual assault.
Not great, Bob.
No, not good. That is the kind of definition of stupid.
Right.
But they've got problems administratively, like top down, that they've got to figure out. But let's fix them from a football perspective. What's the new Big Ten going to be? Because they're going to have to fit into that. We've already seen Wisconsin and Purdue lean harder into it. Like Purdue was already kind of doing it, and then maybe even leaned harder with, bringing in a Graham Harrell as the offensive coordinator. Wisconsin with Phil Longo under Luke Fickell opening things up. You've got Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA coming in wide open. Now, do you try to be Michigan State? That's Michigan State of old and like tough and gritty, and we're Michigan State and East Lansing, gosh darn Michigan, and we're going to be we're going to, eat nails and crap thunder. I don't know. But I don't know.
Eat lightning and crap thunder.
Yeah, all those different things. Like, and hire somebody like Mike Elko? Or do you go, you know what? Let's open this thing up a little bit.
I was thinking of coaches that don't currently have jobs, but also it's hard to envision a world where like Michigan and Michigan State, they were throwing it around a little bit, especially in that, they're always based on a run-first offense, but in that the Cotton Bowl that they beat Baylor, they're throwing it around.
Yeah, Connor Cook was pretty good.
Connor Cook was good college quarterback. It's hard to envision a world where I'm waking up on a Saturday morning and it's gray outside and it's snowing and everything, and they're not running the football. Like, that just doesn't sit right with me for some reason. I do like kind of zigging when everybody's zagging, like you're bringing in all these new teams and like where, all of a sudden, the Big 12 was wide open forever. And then all of a sudden it's just like, hey, how about we just run the football? Like Baylor's like, let's just wide zone run. Mm-hmm. And it worked for one season, but I kind of like that. So I was thinking David Shaw. Like, I know it didn't work out at the end there at Stanford, but he
worked for a while.
It worked. For a long while. Were we riding Harbaugh's coattails? Maybe a little bit, but like, he produced some NFL caliber talent. He had Stanford playing way better than they should have. Also, he's just a steady, good guy too.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. He seems like a California guy now. Like I think he lives out there. His kids go to California colleges and play football. I don't know. It just made more sense to me because he was so steady at a school that was always fighting an uphill battle against larger brands, which I think Michigan State is going to have to do, even though they put a lot of money into their athletic stuff.
I kind of like the idea of a Brian Hartline at Ohio State because he's clearly recruiting
that area.
Well, look at who he's getting. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're a good wide receiver, you're probably going there. Yeah. So I would try to take a chunk out of a rival, and I would say, like, all right, here you go. And I would take that away from Ryan Day and see how he responds to it and see if Brian Hartline could be my guy. Now, look, he hasn't been a coordinator for all that long, and so you might be making, like, the Cliff Kingsbury mistake, but the one thing that he is clearly doing is he is recruiting. Well, he is absolutely recruiting and recruiting really well. He's the best recruiter on that staff that gets, top 5, 10 classes every single year.
Yeah, the other name that was mentioned around in some circles, and he was a Texas guy too, and he's been mentioned in some potential. I don't want to speak out of turn, but to like. If a job in Texas were to open, per se, the Oregon offensive coordinator, who I am now blanking on.
Oh, Will Stein.
Will Stein, yeah. He's only like 34.
Yeah.
And he's only been a full-time offensive coordinator, I think, for 2 years.
Yeah.
So is that ready to run a program? No, but you want to take a chunk out of a new rival.
Well, it was funny. And look, this is just our message board and chat room during the show, but yesterday I was reading and one of the listeners was like, well, they should hire this guy or this guy or this guy when we're talking about coaches. And I'm like, well, why everybody you're saying, like, old? Like, I know that, like, you keep saying these old guys.
Yeah.
Well, this is clearly a young man's game. Like, where Kirby Smart is starting to get Nick Saban, I think, is that Kirby Smart is 30 years younger than Nick Saban is.
Yeah.
So, that's where he's getting him.
We spent a whole segment talking about Dan Lanning like he's some seasoned vet. Lanning's only 37.
Yeah. So you've got, looking around, Lincoln Riley's young. Dan Lanning is young. Steve Sarkisian is old compared to them, but he's not an old guy, right? The most Mike Norvell's young. Mm-hmm. It's a young man's game. It really kind of always has been. But occasionally, like, somebody will be in a program so long that they do so well that they were young,
right?
There was a time when Bobby Bowden was young and Kyle Whittingham was young, and those guys were young dudes.
I think Petrino was always like, or Paterno rather was always like,
he was
always like 98.
Yeah, all those guys are like, but really, when you look at it, most of the time it's, when Barry Switzer had his most success at Oklahoma. Was he old ass Barry Switzer? No, he was a young dude.
Yeah.
So that I do think. Darrell Royal at Texas, like, I knew the man when he was old. I met him when he was old. I didn't know him when he was young. When he was young, he was a badass football coach. Like, so those are the things that I think that that they need to do, and they maybe need to, because Michigan State needs to rethink everything they're doing as a university. Clearly,
right?
Because top down, they don't make good decisions.
I think it was mentioned before is like it even goes as far as like administration, because they have had like something like 5 presidents in 4 years or something.
Yeah.
Interim or otherwise. So it's a lot more than what we can do here on a show and talk about. But
yeah, for the stuff that
philosophically,
I
don't know, like, what do they need to go after the high flying athletes, or do they need to make let's just turn this into Iowa North?
Yeah. No, I would want, here's the deal. What's the problem with Iowa right now?
America needs farmers. I don't know.
They cannot score points. They just went and got shut out in a year where they can't even, they have a hard target for points. So anytime that you have 0, that's not any points you've added.
That lowers the average usually.
Yeah. And you can't, when you're trying to get to 325 total points scored, 0 gets you no closer.
That was unbelievable. I told you that I didn't believe in them at all.
Yeah.
Coming into that they were going to score. A Brian Ferentz offense is nasty. And I was completely right
for
about
Brian Ferentz individually at Iowa, they might as well have not played. That would have been better. You could have taken that out of the average, had a tornado come and canceled the game.
Right.
That would have been better than them actually going out and playing and giving
we
you
need an NA and not a 0.
Yeah, exactly. NA and not a 0, because a 0 says, oh no, we not only played, we tried to do that and only got 61 total yards in 4 quarters. That's 15 yards a quarter. 15 yards a quarter that they
awesome.
average. So I think they don't need to double down on that. If I'm Michigan State, I'm going to hire somebody that's going to, like Sean Lewis, the Colorado offensive coordinator, open this bad boy up and make Michigan State fun.
Yeah. You got to do a few things. You have to be able to compete with Michigan. That's the one. I think that'll save a lot of jobs if you are able to compete with Michigan. It goes a long way to beating your rival. I don't know. Can Tom Izzo coach football?
Yeah. I think they've probably asked themselves that a lot. Could you figure this one out and go?
Look, coach, we know you're always around the Elite Eight. So what if we just took a couple years in the Sweet 16?
Yeah. You come out and
figure out the wide zone offense.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Philosophically, it's going to take a whole tear down. Now, I've talked about how much I don't necessarily love a tear down of an entire program, because I don't know what tanking quote unquote does. But it's going to take something like what Matt Rule did at Baylor to.
Well, it doesn't take as long anymore. Everybody's kind of proving it. You can go get in the transfer portal, but you got to be pretty smart about that. Royden, thank you so much. I'll see you in Orlando this weekend. And again, Burger U on Thursday at 2:00 Eastern time, which would be 1:00 Central, but 2:00 we'll be there. And then on Friday at 4:00 we'll be at Bounce House Social. So That should be really fun.
Can't wait to tear my ACL on a bounce house.
Yeah, and I think just if I can coordinate it looks like we're going to have a UCF legend stop by. So we're working that. We're working that right now.
Bortles, baby. Sorry.
Maybe. He knows him. Played on the same team. If I could get Jason from the
Bortles.
if I could get him, that'd be great too. This is the Triple Option on 365 Sports.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.